Hello, David.
Hi, Graham.
How's it going tonight?
Well,
I got a joke for you.
Let's talk about that later. Yeah, go just do the joke. Do the joke.
You know what? A burglar stole one of my lights.
Your jokes have been increasingly not like questions. They're like scenarios that I need to solve with no information.
Well, I should be upset, but I'm delighted.
You know, that one's too good to not have been sent in by an audience member. Am I right on that?
That was sent in by Garrett. You are right. You cracked the case.
I am not delighted, apparently. Garrett, good job. I'm going to give that one let's do a solid 7, just because I'm afraid that my joke won't reach that. The highlights, no pun intended, of that joke. And so I don't want to be too far behind Garrett's joke.
Well, I think that pun was absolutely intended, but go ahead with your joke.
Okay. Graham, last week I told a pirate joke, and I'd like to tell you another pirate joke.
Okay.
What do you call a pirate with both eyes and all his limbs?
With both eyes and all his limbs. What?
A rookie.
Very good. I like that one a lot. I think it does reach the heights of Garrett's joke. I'm also giving that joke a 7. Great work.
Oh, well, this is great. But you know what? Enough of the nonsense. Let's get on with the nonsense. Welcome back to Withywindle, a whimsical interactive show for kids who love stories, words, and groan-worthy jokes, featuring your favorite authors and illustrators. It's part book club, part game show, and it's your weekly adventure through the wild world of wordplay. I am David Kern.
And I am still Graham Pittman.
You've been Graham Pittman for a long time. I wonder how much longer that's going to last. So this is Season 3, Episode 8, the 3.8th episode of Withywindle. And our guest this week on the podcast is...
Are you going to say who it is? Or?
Oh, I was leaving that up to you.
Oh, his name is Adam Gidwitz.
And it strikes me that if we wanted to be funny about it, we could say Adam Gidwith, just to keep up with the iths.
Gidwith.
Yeah. 3th, 8th, Gidwith.
Gidwith the wind.
Gidwithy. Well, Adam Gidwitz is our guest on the podcast this week. He's a really interesting, really fun guy who creates his own really interesting podcast. And he's got lots of books, and he even has a Netflix TV show. But we're going to talk about that later. Before that, we're going to do snack time, and we're going to do book time. And of course, we're going to do lazy words. And then at the end of the episode, we're going to do another round of riddle time, where we tell you the answer to last week's riddle and give you a new riddle for this week for you to contemplate. Graham, we have to tell people about our sponsor. But before we do that, we probably should just let the people know why we sound like we both have our heads in balloons. And it's because we both have our heads in balloons.
No, it is not. If you hear any wheezing, any sneezing, any coughing, any sniffling, it is because we are in fact both sick. Maybe we have the same strain of whatever sickness it is. I don't know, because we are not sitting next to each other, nor do we have the capabilities to know that.
It's true. We don't have like the scientific knowledge or tools or resources or know-how to in any way determine whether we both have the same strain of whatever sickness it is. Yeah. We do, however, have very similar symptoms. And despite that, we are not in the same place.
Let's just say we are not above the weather or to the side of the weather.
Indeed.
But we are both under the weather.
Graham, I'd like to run a theory by you.
Go on.
We have eerily similar symptoms, the two of us. And yes. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus or make accusations that are unfounded. You know, we're all innocent until proven guilty in the court of law. But this is not the court of law. This is the Withywindle podcast. And I want to ask you, do you think the bookstore troll has been sabotaging us because we didn't give him a name?
It's an interesting theory.
Can you prove it wrong?
We do spend a lot of time around a demonstrably unclean creature.
True.
His hygiene is atrocious.
Well, probably has,
so many viruses living inside him.
Like just on the outside of him, honestly.
Yeah, on the inside and outside. As to the intentionality question, I feel like he's been more friendly lately.
That's true. That's true.
Ever before.
That's true.
I think we should send some goodwill.
Okay, so we're not going to pursue this accusation.
I don't think so. I would think there's other smaller troll-like beings in our own houses that with runny noses and gross hands that could have given us the sickness.
Also have a myriad gross things on their insides and their outsides. Yes. Okay. All right. Well, that's fair.
Yeah. If we're going to cast blame and throw shade, we know
always blame your
children. Should probably go.
Well, you know who I don't want to throw shade at? I don't want to throw shade at our friends at The Green Writer because they're helping make this podcast possible this month. Graham, are you or is someone you love an aspiring author? If so, then I would recommend that you try the Green Writer course because it is an audacious invitation to writers who aspire to create and share excellent stories. With motivation, inspiration, and instruction, author S.D. Smith invites writers to launch into their writing adventure with confidence and competence. The aim of this course is to become a Green Writer. That is, a writer who is going and growing. Now, here's the thing. Because you listen to this podcast, you can get $10 off the course and you can get 3 free lessons. So all you have to do is go to greenwriter.sdsmith.com and use the code Withywindle, WITHYWINDLE, to get $10 off the course. Just, enter in that little coupon code box and, it'll help you become a better writer. It'll help SD Smith know that you listen to this podcast and that you like him. And I feel like that's, that's a great thing all the way around. And it might make Graham feel better if you do that.
Yeah, it might. But I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again. The summer sounds like the perfect time to hone and sharpen your writing skills. Are hone and sharpen the same thing? They might be.
They're similar-ish, I think.
Well, better safe than sorry. You might as well double hone or double
if they
sharpen.
are the same thing, you could still do that. Like just, in fact, here's the thing. The Green Writer, for which you can use the code Withywindle to get the first 3 episodes free and the first 3 lessons free, and you can get $10 off, will help you both hone and sharpen your writing this summer. So there's probably a good chance your school year is almost over or is about to be over. And as Graham said, why not do a little schoolwork over the summer? Just kidding. Why not tell some amazing stories over the summer? I feel like this is a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, take a small break every day or a couple times a week from rolling down the hills and
swimming in the swimming pool,
swimming in the swimming hole, and building the tree fort,
playing baseball,
to foster your imagination and learn how to tell great stories.
My kids have been doing that, and one of my kids is like writing a book. He says, and he wants me to read it here soon. So he's been telling me that soon he's going to have a draft for me to read. So I'm pretty excited about that. So I can tell you that parents love to hear the stories that their kids tell. So why not dig into that? Okay, Graham. Speaking of digging in, before we get over to our segment of lazy words, it's snack time. Now we're both kind of feeling under the weather. So our snacks are maybe a little bit muted this week. If snacks could speak, they would be silent. But what do you have in front of you for this week's episode of Withywindle?
I mean, speak for yourself. Does this sound muted? Does this sound muted to you? No. That is because it is gigantic multivitamins inside this plastic case.
So you're eating a gigantic, unmuted. You're just eating multivitamins out of like they're candy. I don't know if you're supposed to do that.
No, I'm not doing that. But they are. Okay. It is like a gigantic green pill,
and it's not muted. So yeah,
it supports my immune system, my bone and brain health. So I don't know if the sickness started in my bones or my brain, or my immune system. That multivitamin is going to help. I'm not snacking on sugar, because that is no good when you're sick or when you're healthy.
Or it's really good when you're sick and really good when you're healthy. No, just depends on how you look at it.
It does not sound good right now. But I am snacking on pretzels.
Oh.
We haven't talked about pretzels on this podcast.
I'm a pretzel fan.
I think they're an underrated snack.
They are. you know what? I've got pretzels in the house, and when we're done here, I might put on some basketball or something, and I might chat out on some pretzels. That's a great idea.
So, like, my favorite pretzel is the pretzel from our pretzel shop here in Concord, North Carolina, which is a very soft, very buttery.
Yep. Shout out to Not Just Frank's.
I do not have that in front of me, which is sad because I love those pretzels so much.
Come on, Not Just Frank's.
I will take all the gluten into my gullet that they can give me. That's a tagline they can use, actually, now. I'll give that to them for free.
All the gluten your gut can hold.
But so I have pretzel sticks from Snyder's that I'm munching on.
Yep.
I also like the little hard pretzel knots or like pretzel, I don't even know what you would call them, like chunks. Almost like the kind of thing you would get in a Gardetto.
Oh, yeah. Gardettos are good.
Yep. So I'm doing that. And I'm also drinking some tea. I've been getting back into tea lately. I really like tea, but I find myself drinking coffee a lot. So I am drinking some Genmei cha tea, which is a green tea from Japan, which has little roasted rice in it. So it's like green tea, and it kind of tastes like popcorn at the same time. It's delicious.
Fun fact about Graham that all the kids will think is amazing, and you should all ask your parents about this. Graham likes a tea called gunpowder tea.
Oh, yes, I do. Very much.
And you should ask your parents about gunpowder tea, and you should say,
"No,
that guy
go on further.
Likes to drink gunpowder."
Yes, ask your parents, tell your parents that, and then tell your parents to go find it and buy it, and then you can all drink it. You could buy all sorts of different weird teas and drink them and have like a rating competition, or like there's so many good things you can do because there's so many varieties. But gunpowder is really good.
So, Graham, I have an assortment of medicinal things in front of me as well. I have to admit, I was at the CVS getting some medicine, and I got one thing that I'm saving for a future episode, a special episode. But I did get some Junior Mints, because Junior Mints, I like the minty stuff because it helps open up my sinuses.
And you couldn't have gotten like a cough drop. You had to get.
No, I did. I got cough drops. I just also got Junior Mints. Yeah, they're right here.
You had to get the mint liquid inside chocolate.
Right. Yes. I'm going to open up your sinuses. I'm limiting myself to three total Junior Mints. You know what? Sometimes when you're not feeling well, you just want some comfort food. No, 3 Junior Mints. See, like they're little Moncala pieces. 1, 2, 3. 3 Junior Mints. That's what I'm limiting myself to during this episode. And then I've got my cough drops and my other stuff. So, a little comfort food while I have to endure the slings and arrows of this podcast with you.
It just struck me. You could play games with candy. Like you just held up Junior Mints, which are like black discs. And if you got some white chocolate covered raisins, you could play like Othello with that.
Oh, true. You could use, I'm sure you could use like Sour Patch Kids, the little people for chess.
Yeah. And then the winner gets to take all the pieces and eat them.
Well, except that everyone's been touching them, but if you want to eat them, I suppose you could
true.
I think you have to have a separate package for the winner.
Is that why the last time we played Sour Patch Kids chess and we were all touching the pieces and then we all ate them? That might be why we're sick. Now I'm thinking about it.
You know what? Let's move on to our next segment. Lazy words.
All right. Like David so lazily said, it is now time for the lazy word segment.
Lazy words.
Where we propose a lazy word and seek to correct it or source corrections.
Right, of course.
From our listeners.
Right.
So last week, the lazy word we proposed was tie.
Yeah, like the thing you put around your neck.
The thing you put around your neck, and tie, we've all collectively decided is called the tie.
Yeah, right.
And we're not okay with that.
Yeah, that seems lazy. It's just lazy.
So Garrett thinks it should be called twisty neck knot. Evan and Lainey think necktie should be called neck tail, which is pretty good. Or leg pointer, probably because it has like a chevron, an arrow at the bottom pointing down. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Rhiannon thinks it should be called pattern nice tea. Or maybe that's nice tie. Pattern nice tie. Pattern nice tea. Joseph thinks it should be called wardrobe completer. Isaac thinks suit fastener or party handsome rope.
Done. Party handsome rope. You know what? I'm going to be going to a wedding soon. I think we're both going, and I'm definitely going to be going around being like, that is a super nice party handsome rope that you're wearing there.
Party handsome rope.
When our friend Tim's getting married, I'm going to be like, Tim, really nice party handsome rope you got going on.
And he'll know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, obviously.
Tim.
Right.
Yeah. Isaac and Charlotte think it should be called fancy neck loop.
That's a good one too.
Lucy thinks neck jewelry. Anna thinks man's necklace.
Hey, that's pretty good.
Their mom thinks neck decor.
Okay. Nice.
Torin thinks it should be called a snazzy wraparound.
You know, I might have to think about calling it when I go up to Tim, like, nice snazzy. You know, what if we just do each of these and see which one hits at the wedding? So like different people will say nice snazzy. What did he say? Wraparound.
Snazzy wraparound. Yeah. Nice party handsome rope.
Yeah, we'll test it out and see what happens.
We'll do an experiment. I like this. There we go.
Perfect.
Another Garrett number 2, suggests fancy Nancy. And Caleb,
see, that's the great thing. You don't have to know why.
No. And we're probably not supposed to say our favorites. Caleb has my favorite one here. He thinks it should be called business neck.
Yeah.
I got to put on my business neck.
Yep. And yeah, tomorrow I think you might have a meeting tomorrow. So tomorrow it's like you can wear a t-shirt and you put that snazzy wraparound and all of a sudden you got a business neck.
Yeah.
It doesn't even matter what you're wearing with it. As soon as you put that snazzy wraparound on, you got a business neck.
It's all business now.
Well, those are all really fun. Those are all really great. Grimm, do we have a lazy word for this week?
Well, didn't this week's lazy words come from your kids?
Oh yeah, that's right. They did. Yep, they did. Okay, so my kids suggested. I'm sure other kids have probably thought of these too, and they're pretty good, and they're truly lazy. You know how you can go out and you might pick fruit, and they come from a bush, and they're blue, and they're a berry, and so we've just decided, let's just call that delicious thing that grows on that bush over there a blueberry because it's blue. And then here's the thing: there's another berry that's also delicious and also grows on a bush, and it's just a different color. And so we thought, let's just call that one a blackberry. So blackberry and blueberry. But here's what's so weird about this. There are other berries that don't have lazy words. Strawberry is not a lazy word. I mean, it's a berry, but it doesn't just say, red berry. Same with raspberry. So we've righted the wrong of those other berries, but blueberry and blackberry, we just continued to let the lazy words stand, and I won't stand for it anymore. But also, blueberries and blackberries are delicious, and they deserve better.
They absolutely do. Do we want to workshop some new names? I love both of those berries very much. Yeah. I think blueberry might be one of my favorite fruits.
Try that. Spheres of joy, maybe.
Spheres of joy. I like that. What about nature's gushers?
Already better than blueberries and blackberries. And then blackberries have that little bit of sour, right? So it comes from a patch of bushes, right? So Sour Patch Berry.
Or what about Patchel Blackle?
It's still better than blackberry. I don't even know what that word means. I don't even know what the letters are in it.
Well, it means the blackberry.
Oh, well, right. But I couldn't put all the letters together is what I'm saying. And it's still better than blackberry. So, okay. So the kids, we need the kids we need to workshop this, right? So the kids should send in their suggestions for better words for the items that are the delicious spheres of joy that are blueberries and blackberries. And Grimm, how can they send in their suggestions?
Well, they should email those in to podcasts@goldberrybooks.com.
Podcasts@goldberrybooks.com. Well, kids, you heard the man. Get to work. And we'll be back in a second for book time. It's book time, which means we're going to talk about 3 chapters from The Phantom Tollbooth by Norton Juster. We're going to talk about chapters 15, 16, and 17. Or as we say here on the podcast, 15, 16, and 17. Graham, why don't you do a quick summary for the kids who maybe they finished the book little bit ago. There were a few chapters ahead of it, or something like that. Just do a quick summary of what happened in these particular chapters, and then I have a question for you that we need to contemplate.
Okay, so chapter 15 is called "This Way to Infinity." That's where they go to infinity. Chapter 16 is called "A Very Dirty Bird." That's where they find a very dirty bird. Chapter 17 is called "Unwelcoming Committee," where they find an unwelcoming committee.
I really should have, after the second one, I really should have known what was going to come there on the third one.
Yes, you should have. Okay, so in "This Way to Infinity," the mathematician takes them into his kind of like study or workshop, which is pretty cool, and feeds them some subtraction stew, which makes them hungrier the more they eat it, which is a very clever and funny device going on there. And there's some more nonsense that happens with the mathematician there. But then Milo wants to travel to infinity. Well, why does he want to do this? Who knows? To get to whatever's at the end of it. So he tries to do that, and he tries by trying to ascend this infinite staircase because the mathematician says, just follow that forever and then take a left. And then so on his journey, he meets 0.58 of a person, of a boy.
Yeah, the boy, yeah.
And so they go into this whole thing about averages.
Averages are imaginary.
Yes. And at one point it says, this all sounded terribly confusing to Milo. And I was right there with Milo. So there's just kind of more nonsense there. And then he goes back to the mathematician and tries to reason with him to bring rhyme and reason back. Because Milo's getting a little tired of the nonsense as well. And he eventually tricks the mathematician.
I like that part, that he's kind of just like fed up with everything.
Yeah. So he eventually tricks the mathematician. And the mathematician sends them on their way to the kingdoms of wisdom. But first they have to go through the forbidding mountains of ignorance.
Where they run into the demons.
They do. They run into some very silly creatures. Which the first one is the ever-present word snatcher, who is making like 18 puns a minute.
Yeah, it's a little bit much.
I just called him the dad bird. Because he was making so many annoying dad jokes.
Yeah. Hey.
But he's not from the mountains of ignorance. He's from a place called Context. He's just kind of visiting the mountains right there. And then they come across kind of a creepy man who sets them to doing very mundane tasks. And his name is the Terrible Trivium. And they do these mundane tasks for a while until they realize these are so unimportant that they're just going to stop.
And he's trying to get them to waste time.
Yes.
He's a time waster.
And then they run into a couple other creatures. One that's concerned with insincerity, and then a gelatinous giant.
Who becomes the shape of whatever is nearby, basically.
Right, and is very scared of ideas, and so they eventually outmaneuver and navigate through these creatures and continue on their way, and that's how we end these chapters.
Okay, Graham, I have a question that I was thinking about. Math magician, right?
Yes,
he's super good at math, and he uses math in all these convoluted, disorienting sorts of way for our hero in the book, for Milo. So then that got me thinking, if you could be a magician of anything, what would you choose? He's a math magician. You can't say magic magician because that's what a magician already is. But if you could be any kind of magician of some skill or activity, what would you choose? Would you choose podcasting magician? Pod magician? Hockey magician?
So I was just trying to think of words that rhymed with math to continue on with that line of thinking. What about a laugh-a-magician?
Laugh magician. Yeah, that's the answer.
I'd like to think on our best days, you and I sometimes can be laugh-a-magicians.
We occasionally just get to the edge of.
We get close.
Laugh-a-magician. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I think.
What about you?
Don't they call a laugh-a-magician a comedian?
Yes, that they do. What would you choose?
I was thinking about this for a while, and I thought you could choose something serious like dad magician. be the most skilled dad. But who cares about that? Then I thought you could be, what would be a really good skill is to be a food magician, like a chef magician. Because if you're a magician of food, which I suppose some people kind of are, then you'd never starve. You'd be able to host great dinners. You'd be able to help a lot of people. And did I say that you would never starve? I think that's important.
So if you become like the chef-a-magician and I'm the laugh-a-magician, we can throw the greatest dinner parties. Like people will leave those dinner parties full and happy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it'd be like the opposite of in the book where Milo, he eats, and the more he eats, the more hungry he is. Isn't that how it goes?
Yes.
Yeah. And it'll be like the opposite of that, where people will leave perfectly satisfied.
Yeah. They'll be like, that was the greatest night of my life. I ate the greatest food and I heard the greatest jokes. And you know what? We could do the first few for free, but then we start charging.
That's true. Yeah,
this is a get rich quick scheme.
It's exactly. Maybe there's a way to make it a pyramid scheme too. Before we get on to our conversation with Adam Gidwitz, is there anything else that you want to mention about this book? Like, we got 3 chapters left. Next week, we're going to finish it. What did you enjoy in this section? What are you going to be looking forward to? Or what is a joke or a pun in this section that you particularly liked? If you want to just do that, that's a good one as well. Because the puns are coming a mile a minute, if you will.
So I liked it when the 0.58 boy chimes in and says, "Infinity is a dreadfully poor place. They can never manage to make ends meet."
That's a good one, yeah.
I thought that was really good. I liked when Milo got confused and was like kind of fed up with everything.
Yeah. I wonder if the kids that are reading kind of feel that. Because there's after a while, all the puns and all the jokes, they're flowing so fast, it's hard to keep up. And I wonder if sometimes that is how the kids feel. Like, I wonder if that's on purpose, to make you feel a little disoriented as we're getting towards the end of the book, so that when you get into the final 3 chapters, that resolution is kind of more meaningful.
Yes. And I also like that the mathematician gives Milo his own magic staff, which is a pencil. I think there's a lot of meaning there.
Yeah. And then he gets to use it to do some magic later.
I like that when the word snatcher, who I'm just going to call the dad bird, is making all his puns and he starts to fly away and Milo shouts at him, "Wait!" And he says, 34 pounds. Just telling
my favorite one. We'll do after this one. Let's move on to our guest here. But they're talking to the boy who's 0.58 of a person. And he says, "Every average family has 2.58 children, so I always have someone to play with. Besides, each family also has an average of 1.3 automobiles, and since I'm the only one who can drive 3/10 of a car, I get to use it all the time."
Yeah.
"But averages aren't real," objected Milo. "They're just imaginary." "Well, that may be so," he agreed, "but they're also very useful at times. For instance, if you didn't have any money at all, but you happened to be with 4 other people who had $10 apiece, then you'd each have an average of $8. Isn't that right?" "I guess so," said Milo weakly. So you can see Milo's just sort of like, this is silly. What is going on?
Yeah. And one kind of serious passage that I really liked was the No Face Man, terrible trivium, when he assigns them all those useless tasks.
Yeah, those worthless jobs.
And Milo starts to kind of crack a little bit and says, why do we do only unimportant things?" asked Milo, who suddenly remembered how much time he spent each day doing them. And then the man says, "Think of all the trouble it saves. If you only do the easy and useless jobs, you'll never have to worry about the important ones, which are so difficult. You just won't have the time, for there's always something to do to keep you from what you really should be doing. And if it weren't for that dreadful magic staff, you'd never know how much time you were wasting." Just leave it there.
Yeah, that's a good one for us to think about. So while you're thinking about that, we're going to take a quick break, and we will be back in just a moment for our conversation with Adam Gidwitz. It's time for our conversation with the great Adam Gidwitz. Adam Gidwitz on Withywindle. Adam is the author of several best-selling children's books, such as A Tale Dark and Grim, In a Glass Grimly, and The Grim Conclusion. He also is the author of a book for which he won the Newbery Honor. It's called The Inquisitor's Tale, or The Three Magical Children and Their Holy Dog. And then he also is the co-producer of an animated miniseries on Netflix called A Tale Dark and Grim, based on his book, A Tale Dark and Grim. And of course, he also is the host of a podcast that you and your son really like, right? And my kids love it too. It's called Grimm, Grimmer, Grimmest. And all of his work, most of his work has to do with fairy tales. So we talk about fairy tales quite a bit. We do a quiz. We talk about his favorite foods and all the usual stuff that you would expect from a weird conversation on Withywindle. Graham, on a scale of 17,942 and 1, what would you say this interview ranks?
I would rank this interview as a 1.
Oh, because 1's the good ranking in this time?
Yeah, I inverted it.
Oh, okay. I see. Okay.
1 is the best. It's 1.
I see. Which is probably for the best, because I don't think either of us remember what the actual number is that I just said.
No.
All right. With that, let's get it over to our conversation with Adam. We had a great time. We hope you have a great time, and we'll see you on the other side for riddle time. All right. We're here with Adam Gidwitz. I guess we have to be. Adam, thanks for coming on, I guess.
I mean, wow. I felt so welcome right before that.
What was that, David?
Oh, sorry. I'm supposed to pretend that I'm happy.
I'll pretend too if you do. We can both pretend.
Graham, you think we should? We've only been trying to get Adam to come on for like 3 seasons now, and we're like, I was so excited for a while, and it took so long. And
you're
no,
feigning.
I'm just kidding.
You're feigning.
I don't. Here's the thing. I'm doing this because I don't want Adam to think to know how excited we are to have him on the podcast.
Oh, I see. All right, continue.
Adam, seriously, Adam. This is very special. We're very excited. Thank you for coming on. Just ignore the fact that I was trying to not give away how excited I am.
Ignored. I'm very grateful to be here.
We have a ton of questions from kids, but we have to start with the same question that we always begin with. We decided after the first episode that we could never ask a question more important than this. I think it came from Aiden, and here it is. Are you ready?
Yes.
Cheetos or Doritos?
Oh, Doritos.
Without question?
Definitely Doritos. And without question, I think Cool Ranch. I do love Cheetos, but for some reason I eat so many of them that I feel really sick. And also I think that the Cheeto cheese is harder to get off your fingers. So it's like your fingers are orange forever. Whereas Doritos, you can wash away your guilt like fairly easily. Whereas the Cheetos is like, it's like if you rob a bank. I don't know if you guys have ever robbed a bank before, but when you rob a bank.
Well, we don't talk about it on the podcast.
Oh, sorry. Oops. Well, anyway, if you were ever to rob a bank, but I'm sure you never have.
Right.
When you get the money, they like put dye canisters in it and it explodes on you, and then you can't get it off, and then the police know who you are. And Cheetos is just like that. It's like evidence that you just ate Cheetos for a month.
So over the course of this season, we've had guests come on who have told us that they love Cheetos, but because it's bad for artists, the Cheeto dust gets all over their artwork. they use chopsticks. More than one person told us this season that they use chopsticks to eat Cheetos.
Well, maybe Cheetos has just been resurrected in my life.
There you go.
Probably a bad thing, but I'm so glad to know it.
I believe they call that a life hack, David.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I like this answer. You can't like clandestinely eat Cheetos. Everybody's going to know because of the dust. So Doritos makes more sense.
They should start marketing cheat sticks, right? Because it's like Cheeto chopsticks, cheat sticks, and it's also a life hack. I feel like that pun sounded better in my head.
We're solving a lot of problems here, though. Like already we're solving problems for the world. Adam, are you in general, someone who prefers sweet food or savory food?
Savory food, especially for breakfast. A lot of people like the pancakes and the waffles and the syrup, but that just makes me want to fall asleep. So I'm always going for the savory food. And maybe it was that feeling was influenced by my time as a teacher. So I was a teacher, first grade and second grade, as well as older grades. But during those lower elementary years, we would always have like once a month, maybe we would do breakfast for lunch. You guys know what that is? Where like in the cafeteria, they would serve like waffles and syrup or whatever. And so when you're a teacher and they do breakfast for lunch, first of all, everything is sticky. You have to clean up this like
no thanks
sticky cafeteria. And then the kids have this sugar high for about an hour after lunch. And then they just crash so hard that we always had at least 3 children like weeping by the end of the school day. So I think that the sweet thing, I might have liked it when I was younger, but breakfast for lunch just ruined that for me.
That makes a lot of sense to me, actually. I just had somebody come up to me that was talking about how they read a study about how sugar actually doesn't affect children as much as everybody says it does. And I just stared at them until they walked away.
That is the only right response. I remember the first time my daughter had sugar. We had kept like processed sugar away from her for her first year. And then she was, of course, with one of her grandmothers. And my wife is Italian. They have a big Italian family, and they were cannoli on the table. And she took like a big fingerful of cannoli cream and just shoved it into our daughter's mouth. And I remember watching my daughter's face, like as her eyes lit up. And then she like started toddling around the room, and then she started dancing this insane dance I'd never seen before. And then she literally fell on the ground and her whole body was shaking, and then she fell still. So that's what I say to the person who told you about that study.
Yeah. You need to have a little video of that, and you can just show it to any detractors.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. So it sounds like what happens after, is that like after breakfast for lunch in your classroom?
That's exactly. Yes.
Okay. Now, if you're eating sweet food though, do you prefer cookies or cake?
Cookies. I do like both. I mean, it's hard to choose on that one, but I'm going to go with cookies. I like the varieties of textures that you can get with cookies. A really good oatmeal raisin, obviously chocolate chip with walnut. All these things can be, a chocolate cookie with peanut butter chips. All of these can be amazing. I feel like, I'm going to go with cookies. But, if you ask me tomorrow, I might go back to cake.
Adam, I like how you led with oatmeal raisin. That's a bold choice.
It's not my favorite, but it is underappreciated, especially if you get a nice soft one.
And it seems to be kind of top of mind for you.
Okay, I did have an oatmeal raisin cookie yesterday.
That's what I thought.
It was so good.
So we're going to have some other food questions that the kids sent in. But before we get into the rest of these questions, we want to give you a chance to kind of talk about your work, because you have a wide array of things that you do. What are you working on currently? What's the series that right now is kind of most occupying you? And just anything you want to say that like the kids, to know Adam Gidwitz, they have to know this about your work.
Okay. Well, I think the thing to know about my work is I've got 3 very different series, you might call them, though they're not all series. And if you like a different kind of thing, you might like a different series. So for example, the first thing I ever did, and a lot of my time is occupied by retelling Grimm's fairy tales. And a lot of people think fairy tales are like cute and sweet stories for little kids. But if you know the real Grimm fairy tales, that you know that they are not cute and not sweet at all. The real Grimm fairy tales are very dark. They can be very scary. They can be gruesome. They're almost always super weird. And I love the weirdest stories and often the darkest stories. So my book, A Tale Dark and Grimm, and its 2 companions are about those. And I've got that podcast, Grimm, or Grimmest. And I helped make a Netflix series about A Tale Dark and Grimm. So like one part of my life is about weird and dark and funny fairy tales. And one of the things I'm working on right now is I have just started to try to adapt those podcast fairy tale episodes into graphic novels, which is super fun and like a new thing for me to do. So I just wrote a script for a graphic novel called Hans My Hedgehog. Hans My Hedgehog is one of my favorite Grimm stories. It's super weird. It's about a boy who's half boy and half hedgehog. So like that's one big part of what you should know about Adam Gidwitz is like weird fairy tales. My most recent series is called The Unicorn Rescue Society, and it's about 2 kids who travel around the world rescuing mythical creatures from danger. And that is more of like a fast, funny adventure comedy series. And I co-wrote it with authors from the cultures that the Unicorn Rescue Society visits. We had this really awesome, fun collaboration where like I wrote with Joseph Bruchac, a Native American author, about Sasquatch, which is, or Bigfoot. Or David Bowles, a Mexican-American author, about chupacabras. And so that's a super fun series, usually for like the 2nd grade through 4th grade set. And I really like that. And then the last thing that you should know is that I wrote a book called The Inquisitor's Tale, which takes place in the Middle Ages and is about 3 magical children and a holy dog. And it's a big epic adventure. Okay, that was like everything. Was that too much? That was too much.
No, that was great.
Okay.
But how do you find time to do any of them when you're doing all of these things?
That is a good question. I've been learning something recently about myself. I've never really talked about it in public. So congratulations, you asked the right question at the right time. Here we go. So what I have talked about in public is that when I was a kid, I had a lot of trouble in school. I got in trouble all the time because I couldn't pay attention. I wasn't very good at listening to my teachers.
It was all that breakfast for lunch.
It was all that breakfast for lunch. No, even without breakfast for lunch, I was, they called me like a space cadet. And only recently have I realized, somebody suggested this to me, somebody with like a psychological background. They were like, did you ever get diagnosed with ADD, with attention deficit disorder? And I said, no. And then they kind of gave me a look like, like maybe you should have been. And, I think I don't really love the term ADD because a disorder makes it seem like there's something wrong with you. I have a lot of energy and I like to pay attention to things that deeply engage me. And if I have finished my work on a project, maybe I've worked for 2 hours on it and I just can't concentrate on it any longer, I'm exhausted. I don't want to be idle for more than half an hour or so before I need to start thinking about something else. And that got me in trouble in school. But now it really helps me. So it's not that I have attention deficit disorder, but maybe like I have an attention superpower where I can focus really hard on a lot of different things over the course of a day. And that makes me feel like I'm engaged in my full life. So kids, if you're listening and people are like, you have an attention problem, you can just say like, you just haven't seen what my attention can do yet.
You haven't seen the superpower part yet.
Exactly.
We're harnessing it.
Yes. Yeah. And enjoying it finally, after a lot of years of kind of suffering from it.
Graham, what do you say? We got a ton of questions. I think we probably should dig into these because otherwise we're going to leave some kids hanging.
All right. So Adam, Leah wants to know, what inspired you to use fairy tales in your stories and why those fairy tales?
Okay. So I was a teacher, like I mentioned. I taught first grade, second grade, fifth grade, and then some high school. One day I got a phone call from my school and they asked me if I'd be willing to be a substitute librarian for a day. And I was like, yes, because librarian is one of the best jobs I can imagine. You can hang out with kids and tell stories that you like to kids. So I said, yes. They said I would be telling stories to second graders. I said, no problem. They said, tell them any story you want. I said, great. So I went home and I was looking around my shelf for a good story to read to second graders. And I came across my big book of Grimm's fairy tales. Now, I had never read this book. So I looked at it and I thought, oh, fairy tales. Those are perfect for little kids. So I opened it up to a story called Faithful Johannes. And in the story, Faithful Johannes, spoiler alert and also like scary alert, children get their heads cut off by their parents. They get put back on again, so they're totally fine. I promise. The kids are fine. But I read that and I was like, can I read this to second graders? Will I get fired? And then I thought, let's find out. So I brought the book in and I started reading it to these kids. This is all true. And as I was reading it, the kids started to get very nervous. So I would make jokes to calm them down, or I warned them when something scary or terrifying was about to happen. And I think I did a pretty good job because by the end of the story, I looked up and every kid had the same expression on their face. Now, kids, you're not going to be able to see my expression. So maybe you guys, David and Grimm, you could just like describe what my face looked like. So I finished the story. I looked up and every kid looked like this. Like, could you guys describe that?
It looked, gravity was at work.
I was trying to do horrified, but you guys
could you do it again?
Yeah. That looks like shock and awe.
Yeah, they were shocked and terrified, slack-jawed. So I dismissed the children. Some of them were crying. I think one little boy peed his pants. But a few of them came up to me afterwards, and I'll never forget it because this one little girl sticks her finger in my face, and she goes, "That was good." And I said, "What?" And she said, "You should make that into a book." And so I did. So that story became the first chapter of A Tale Dark and Grim. Because that girl told me to make it that way.
And look at that. And that girl has set you on the path.
She has. She really has. I saw her on the street a couple of years, last year, actually, and it was very exciting to see her. And I told her that story. And she said, "I remember that." And I said, "Was the story really that horrifying?" And she said, "Yes."
Wait, Graham, is this next question from your kid?
Yeah, this one's from my son, Rowan. You want to ask
All
it,
right.
David?
Sure. Rowan wants to know if you prefer Grimm, Grimmer, or Grimmest fairy tales.
That's a good question. So most kids, well, to help the audience understand, if you listen to the podcast, they are rated. Each episode is rated Grimm, Grimmer, and Grimmest. And the Grimmest is obviously the most gruesome and scary. Honestly, I prefer the Grimmer ones. Grimmest can get very dark, and I'm often worried about the children that I'm telling the story to while I'm telling it. Grimm are fun, but Grimmer, for me, has got that perfect balance of hilarious and really messed up.
So when you're thinking about this, have you ever not done a story, even in the Grimmest category?
Yeah, there was one story that I wrote, we prepared, and then I work with Pinna, who's a wonderful company that helps me make the podcasts. And they said, this one is too freaky. And you know what? That makes me a little bit sad. But if ever you meet me in person, like if I come to your school or you go to maybe a wonderful bookstore that I visit, hint, hint, maybe I'll tell you the story that never made it on Grimm, Grimmer, Grimmest. If you ask nicely, I'll tell you.
That sounds pretty fun. But like, be prepared to make the face that he was making a second ago.
You will definitely make that face because it's Grimmestest. It's beyond Grimmest. It's Grimmestest.
All right, continuing on this theme, Jackson wants to know about the making of the podcast. So he asks, what school do you use? I imagine that's which school are you visiting? And is making the podcast hard?
Both great questions, Jackson. So in the first 2 seasons, I visited a school in Brooklyn and a school in Manhattan, one called Brooklyn Friends, another one called Manhattan Country Day. I think I got the name of the second one right. Anyway, 2 schools, one in Brooklyn, one in Manhattan. Maybe we edit out those 2 names. And then the pandemic hit. And what we started doing was inviting kids from all over the country and all over the world to Zoom in with me. So seasons 3 and season 4, which is coming out in the fall, we recorded over Zoom. And there are kids from Canada and Arizona and New York and everywhere. Yeah, at first it was in a classroom and now it's remote. And is it hard to do? Yeah, it's hard. I mean, one of the hardest parts is taking these cool old Grimm fairy tales, but then really I do a lot of rewriting so that they are maximally awesome. And that's the hardest part. And then once it's recorded with the kids, that's super fun. But then I have to record it again to make sure it sounds just right. And that takes a lot of takes to do it over and over again so it sounds just right. So that can be hard.
Have you ever, is there any way you could do it without, I guess, like the kids live?
It would be way less fun.
Yeah.
Because, the kids are, they're laughing, they're screaming. I love it when they scream. But they heckle me. Like there's one episode where like there's a blue dwarf and this kid goes, "You mean a Smurf?" And I'm like, "No, it's not a Smurf, it's a dwarf." And a blue dwarf. And she was like, "I'm pretty sure that's a Smurf." And then every time the blue dwarf came up for the rest of the episode, she goes, "It's a Smurf." And I was like, "It's not a Smurf." And that just goes on. And they're like, "We can't make that up. That's just kids being annoying." Right. So couldn't do it without them.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Lucy wants to know if you've ever written a story where the ending turned out to be different than you originally thought it would be.
That's a great question, Lucy. The answer is almost every time. So especially when I'm writing my books, I always make an outline. I always know what I want to happen in the book before I start writing. And as I write it, I follow the outline. And then just about every time the outline changes. I get halfway through and I'm not enjoying writing it anymore. Some people say like, "Oh, I get writer's block and I don't know what to write." But I usually think that writer's block is actually not that you don't know what to write, but that you don't want to write what you were intending to write next. And you just can't make yourself do it because, in fact, you don't really want to. You're not excited by it. So whenever that happens when I'm working on a book, I change where it's going. So almost every one of my books has a different ending than the one I intended.
Okay, this brings up a question for me. This is just me following up on that good question. Is there a kind of story that you have never written? It could be a genre or something that you still want to write. Maybe you want to write a cowboy story or something like that. You've written something about the Middle Ages. Maybe it's like a Star Wars ripoff. Is there something that you just would love to write that you haven't gotten around to yet?
Well, in fact, I'm in the middle of revising a book where that was exactly the situation. So the books that I love to read most on my own, the grown-up books that I love to read most are spy novels. And so I have finally written a spy novel, which I'm revising right now.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I see, David, you got excited about spy novels.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That's like my favorite.
Really? So
yeah.
Are you a fan of the adult author, John Le Carre? You read his
absolutely.
books?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So he is a great inspiration to me. I even wrote to him once. It's, I think, one of the only fan letters to an author I've written as an adult. I write to authors sometimes, but not like, dear Mr. Le Carre, I'm nervous to write this to you, but I really, and he wrote me back a really wonderful letter. So
that's cool.
This book is inspired in part by the kind of spy novels that he writes, but it's for kids. And it is also inspired by a family friend of ours. So when I was growing up, we had a family friend who was part of something called the Kindertransport. The Kindertransport was when Jewish children were taken out of Nazi Germany in 1938 and 1939, right before World War II started. And they were sent to England, where they were placed with families in England, and their parents were left behind. So this is the story of a brilliant young man, a 12-year-old boy, who gets placed with a British family who works in British intelligence. And these are a real British family who really existed, really did work in British intelligence, who really did take in a kid from the Kindertransport. And he convinces them to send him back into Germany as a spy. They have a reason for sending him back. He has a mission, but he has his own secret mission that they don't know about. And in addition to that, he has 2 kobolds, which are like goblins, that have appeared on his shoulders. And they're talking the whole time while he's going through this spy novel. So it's like a spy novel, and then they're constantly kibitzing, like Statler and Waldorf, those 2 grumpy Muppets in the Muppet Show.
It's amazing. So wait, when is this coming out?
It unfortunately won't be out until fall 23. I'm revising it right now. So not this coming fall, but the next fall.
But you finished it.
I finished the first draft of it.
Yeah,
the problem with the first draft is that it is twice as long as the longest book I've ever written. So we're going to have to do some cutting.
Yeah.
We'll get you just the best parts, I promise. We'll leave all the best parts in there.
Well, this all like, we have some questions about writing that some of the kids put in here. And there's, let's do this one first, because you mentioned John Le Carre. Asher wants to know, was there an author who inspired you to start writing? So you're saying that he inspired that story. Is there anybody else, or maybe it's just him, that inspired you to start writing in the first place?
Well, certainly the person who really inspired me to start writing in the first place was that 2nd grade girl who stuck her finger in my face. But the author who I've always been most inspired by, whose style and books inspire me the most and have always since I was a kid, is Roald Dahl. Matilda is, I think, one of my favorite books of all time. The BFG is close behind it. Roald Dahl does this combination of creepy and hilarious that I really love. The Witches fit in that category too. I, in fact, read The Witches with a 2nd grade class, but we only got about 50 pages in before one evening, as I was settling down with my tea to relax after school, I got not 1, but 2 phone calls from 2 different parents saying that their children were having nightmares and would I please stop reading The Witches to them. And I did, but it just made me love the book all the more. So I love Roald Dahl.
That Dahl's a great one. Graham, should we ask about this writing routine one? What do you think of that one next?
Absolutely not.
Okay. You just deleted it from our document.
No. Okay, so we have a question here, except it only says writing routine, ? So take that however you want to.
Yeah, exactly. Open-ended.
Yes.
Moving on.
Okay. My writing routine is, I do have a very strict writing routine. I think most writers that I know do have a very strict writing routine. It can be hard to make yourself write every day unless it's just what you do. And when you have a writing routine, it's almost like if you run every day, or let's say you expect to have recess after lunch every day. If one day you don't get to have recess, let's say it's like pouring rain or something, your body feels weird. Right? Your body is like ready to run around after recess. And so if you can get your body and your brain expecting to write every day at the same time, it makes it easier to do it. So for me, my writing routine is I help my daughter get on the school bus, and then I walk down into the park that's near my house, and I open up my computer and I sit in the park with a mug of tea, and I write for 2 hours, maybe an hour and a half if I'm tired, 2.5 hours, 3 hours if it's a great day of writing. That's my routine for writing each day, and I do it even in the wintertime. So I look like the weirdo in my neighborhood. I have like my big blanket with fleece and a huge hat, like a big Russian like fur hat, and I sit there in the snow and I write for at least an hour if it's too cold to stay out for longer than that.
Do you have those gloves with you where there's no fingers so that you fingertips
I have
so that you
two
can
pairs. I have a winter set and a spring set.
Okay.
So yes,
perfect.
Yes, exactly.
I'm just writing all of this down so that I can let you inspire a character in a book that I'm going to write about
Sounds great.
An author who does this.
That's great.
So what I'm hearing,
also, yes, great.
yeah, the importance of setting habits or developing habits, habitual.
It does. It helps a lot. And I also, when I'm writing, you also have to sort of be willing to not be embarrassed. I mean, I know that I should be embarrassed. My wife is very embarrassed by me. But when I'm writing, I not only sit out there in the snow or whatever, but I talk to myself when I'm writing. And if something is funny, if I don't laugh out loud, it's not funny enough to go in the book. And if it's supposed to be scary, if I'm not scaring myself, it's not scary enough to go in the book. And if it's supposed to make the reader feel a lot of emotions, if I don't cry while I'm writing it, it doesn't go in the book. So I'm sitting there in the winter with my gloves with the holes, and I'm laughing and crying by myself on a bench. And it looks like I have a lot of problems, but I get paid for these problems. And I wouldn't have it any other way.
You get to share them with other people.
I sure do. Sometimes they even pay me to share them. It's really amazing.
So there's a question here from the Jansen kids. And this is a really interesting one. It says, how do you feel? Well, it's a two-parter. How do you feel about the modern movement to tell the backstories of villains? And then how do you feel about stories like The Little Mermaid being changed to have happy endings, sometimes at the expense of like the warning at the end of it? So I guess the two-parter, modern movement to tell villain backstories, and then changing stories to have happy endings.
This is such a fascinating and sophisticated question. Jansen family, well done. Okay, so two-part question, right? Let's do the second part first. I have always had a huge problem with changing the real fairy tales or the real traditional stories to make them cute and sweet for little kids. It bothers me for two major reasons. First of all, because it robs those stories of their meaning, like you suggested. Now, I don't really believe that fairy tales, for the most part, are warnings. I think a lot of times we say that, Little Red Riding Hood teaches children not to stray from the path. Maybe, but actually Little Red Riding Hood is a really good story about a lot of other feelings. I mean, for example, Snow White. Does Snow White teach you that, your parents want to kill you with poison apples? No, I mean, like, the Snow White is about complicated feelings that you actually probably have towards your parents, maybe that they even have towards you, and how you navigate those feelings. When you make these stories sweet and happy, you take away those meanings in a way that I think is terrible. And then the first part of the question was what?
How do you feel about the movement, the sort of modern movement to tell the villain backstories?
Oh, yes. So I'm fine with that. I don't have a problem with it. But I think it comes out of the fear of telling stories that we don't know already. Everybody knows like 7 or 8 fairy tales, right? Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, Little Red Riding Hood, Hansel and Gretel, Rapunzel, Rumpelstiltskin. Did I say Hansel and Gretel already? That's like 7, 8. That's about it. There are hundreds of incredible fairy tales that people don't know. And so there's a desire to take those same 7 fairy tales and tell them from every single perspective. When instead of telling Cinderella from 12 perspectives and have 12 different, books/movies about Cinderella, why don't we try telling Hans my Hedgehog? Why don't we try telling The Farmer's Clever Daughter? Why don't we try telling The Jaws of the Mermaid? These stories will make your hair stand up. They will make you laugh. They might make you cry a little bit. They'll definitely make you scream a few times. And so when I tell these kinds of stories to kids, usually their reaction is, why grown-ups keep these stories from me for my whole life. So that's my response.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Thank you.
Okay, so Grimm fairy tales seems to be kind of your corner of the fairy tale world.
That's right, Chris Colfer. Back off.
If we ever get Chris Colfer to come on, then we'll then secretly have you parachute into that episode.
Yeah,
and then you
just use that audio clip. Just throw it in there in the middle.
Colfer.
Yeah,
one-on-one matchup.
We're gonna lead with that audio clip. Okay, so Hans Christian Andersen, Andrew Lang, are these collectors of fairy tales? Are they in your wheelhouse? Are you reading these guys as well? Do you have some sort of hierarchy where you think Grimm is the top one? What draws you to Grimm more than the other ones?
That's a fascinating question. I'm glad you asked it. So Hans Christian Andersen is, to me, pretty different from Andrew Lang and the Grimm brothers, because Hans Christian Andersen mostly made up his own stories instead of collecting them. And when he made them up, he often made them really sad. I love the Grimm stories particularly because they often are weird and dark and scary, but almost always they are weird and dark and scary in the middle. But ultimately, there is a main character that you identify with who triumphs in the end. And personally, that's the kind of story I like. I think these fairy tales are about being a young person and growing up. And our goal in growing up is to grow up, is to become wiser and stronger and just make it through childhood. So Hans Christian Andersen writes a bunch of stories where you don't make it. And I'm not as into that. So I do love the Lang stories. I happen to have gotten deeply into Grimm first, but I think Lang is great. And I fairly recently discovered another collector of fairy tales who was only rediscovered himself about 15 years ago. I talk about him in the 3rd season of Grimm, or Grimmest. His name is Franz Xaver von Schönberg. You guys want to say that?
No.
Okay.
Franz what?
Franz. Xaver. Xaver, like Xavier, but it's the German way.
Xaver, okay.
Xaver
von Schönberg?
Schönwerth.
So, yeah. Okay.
Anyway, this guy lived around the same time as the Grimm brothers. He's sort of at the end of their career. And he collected fairy tales too. Unlike the Grimm brothers, he didn't edit them and make them... The Grimm brothers often edited and even retold the stories that they were told to make them better in their view. Von Schönwerth was more of a sort of historian and collector. So he just collected them. But his stories, we didn't know that they existed until about 15 or 20 years ago, when a young woman, a master's student in Munich, was going through boxes in the library, the public library, the National Library there, and found a box of, I think, 150 stories that he had collected. And they're super weird. And some of them are amazing. So I've also recently gotten into his stories. For example, one of my favorites is called The Turnip Princess, about a princess who gets turned into a turnip. It's better than it sounds, I promise.
As someone who comes from a German family, the Germans really knew how to tell some weird stories.
Yes. Did you hear weird stories growing up?
Well, we read a lot of these kind of fairy tales. So
yeah.
Yeah. And when you hear them, my grandmother grew up in Germany and didn't live here until she was an adult. And so when you hear them being read to you or told in that German accent, it also adds to it.
Oh, I bet. I would love that. We should do a special podcast where is your grandmother still with us?
She's not.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
We could probably...
a special podcast where you imitate your grandmother's voice and tell a story in her accent. I think that would be amazing.
That would not be amazing, but or at least it wouldn't be amazing in the ways that you are hoping for.
I'm hoping for any kind of amazingness. I don't care which kind.
I've got uncles that could definitely do that, though.
Oh, let's do it.
Well, actually, yeah, my uncles totally could do that. Graham, should we ask a couple more? And then we've got a quiz for you, and it's a very, very serious quiz that you're probably going to fail if we're being honest. But Graham's the keeper of the quiz, so we'll get to that in a second. What do you think? 2 more questions in the quiz, Graham?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. Madeline and Aubrey would like to know how you keep track of all your characters. Do you have like a character profile of some kind?
I probably should. I don't. In fact, characters is one of the things I find hardest to do. I love telling stories. I love the scary parts of stories. But keeping track of all the different emotions of all the different characters and their arcs is something that I'm only getting better at as I get older. I feel like my brain is getting a little bit stretched out by all of the writing that I do. And so there are new pockets to keep these characters in that I can hold on to. So maybe I need a system, but I don't have one yet. But that's a good idea. Maybe I'll get one now. Thanks for the suggestion.
Seems to be working for you.
I mean, yes, but I'm always trying to get better. My books are always changing. So it's a good idea. Something to try.
Graham, you want to do this one, or are you preparing for the quiz?
No, the quiz is prepared.
Oh, okay.
I'm on top of that quiz. Let's ask this one from Eliana, because I like this question, and I think we should maybe use it going forward.
It's a great one.
All right, Adam. We'll change the name for each one, though we won't say Adam. Adam, if you had to choose one thing to save from a burning house, not a person or a pet, what would it be?
Okay. I also think I should rule out my computer where all of my writing is, right? Like, forget that. I mean, this is a boring answer, but the notebooks with my writing in it. I have written down so many ideas, so many things, so many stories that are my life, right? Other than the people who live in my house, my wife and my daughter, my life is the stories that I live in hours and hours every day. If I were to lose that stuff, I would feel really sad. So I'd probably have like flaming notebooks falling out of my arms as I fell down the stairs out of my burning apartment.
Wow.
Was that the kind of image you were looking for? Maybe
no, that's actually great. I'm going to write this one down too. Lots of ideas for the writer's in the park with his fingerless gloves and his Russian winter hat. Next thing you know, he's running down the stairs, burning stairs, like the conflagration in Jane Eyre.
Yeah, with burning notebooks falling from his arms.
You can call it Frozen Tears and Burning Stairs.
That's a good title.
Yeah. At least that's a chapter title, right?
Yeah.
Okay, Graham, quiz time.
Oh gosh, I'm super nervous.
Good.
You definitely should be. Yeah. It's going to be so hard.
As David alluded, or explicitly stated, we like to offer our guests a tailored quiz. Now, sometimes the quiz is about something related to their life or their work. This one you could call...
What can I call it?
Whoa, hold on one second.
That's funny. His dog has not barked one time this season. And then right then.
The timing was perfect.
It's weirder because I don't have a dog. That's the weird part. You would be hard-pressed to even call this quiz tangentially related to Mr. Adam Gidwitz. But I am going to call it tangentially related. And we are going to move forward. That's
what I named my child too, actually. Tangentially related. That's what I call it.
Tangentially related Gidwitz.
Yeah. Sorry, Graham.
Perfect.
No, this is you're right on tempo here. This is a blanker blankest quiz.
Perfect.
I'm not going to do any more explanation than that.
Yeah, just roll it. Roll sound.
Question 1. Limmer, limmest. Okay. Which one of the multi-limbed creatures of the natural world would you rather have as a magical guide on a quest through the dark and the dangerous? And you have to defend your answer. Option A, an ornery but honest octopus. B, a shrewd and tricksy starfish. Or C, an eccentric and incredulous millipede. Go.
Well, certainly the ornery yet honest octopus. I prize honesty. I also generally trust people who are a little bit ornery. I feel like they're giving me their true selves. And octopuses are incredibly smart. Also, if you've seen Finding Dory, the underrated sequel to Finding Nemo, there's a wonderful and ornery octopus in that. And if I could be his friend, I would be.
Great answer. If you would have picked the eccentric millipede, we would have stopped.
Yeah, I mean, those are gross, and yeah.
That was really like a test to see. Like,
I don't even want to know what eccentricities he has. I do not care. Question 2. Prim, primer, primest. All right, primrose flowers come in all sorts of kinds and colors, typically known by and beloved in their pale yellow form. These flowers have long been favored by poets and writers alike. In fact, the primrose is the second favorite flower in Britain behind the bluebells. So here's your question.
I have no idea where this question is going. I can't even predict.
I know. What would it take to knock those pretentious bluebells off their high horse and get the primrose up into that premier spot where it belongs? Go.
Oh my goodness. You told me this wasn't going to be hard.
Well, there's no wrong answer.
I don't remember saying that. There is a wrong answer.
Okay, first of all, I can't even picture a primrose. I think I know what bluebells look like. I have to admit, writers who use the natural world very specifically, I admire and envy them so much. I have no clue what any of these flowers look like. What would I have to do to get bluebells knocked off their high horse? I'm sorry, I wouldn't do it. I'm going to stick with bluebells because bluebells, I know what they look like. They're beautiful. And pale yellow, give me a break. Forget it. I'm defending the bluebell.
Okay.
It sounds to me like you just need to get the Primrose Union fighting against the Bluebell Union and just see what happens.
Oh, I mean, I think that war is underway.
Some lobbyists. Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's already going, yeah.
All right, that was an honorable answer. We will accept it for now. I'm still kind of deliberating it in my mind.
Okay. But do you have an answer? I want to know what your answer is for dethroning bluebells.
You don't get to know that answer.
Okay.
Because then you'll use it.
Question 3. Yeah, I've got a plan. Question 3. Tim, Timmer, Timmist.
They call me Tim.
Yeah, there better be a Monty Python now.
I'm hoping.
Okay, rank these Tims. Okay.
Can't even get it out.
I don't know why that's so funny to me. Just to say rank these Tims.
I'm loving it.
Hold on.
I love how hard this question is for you to say.
I wrote it at 3 a.m. Okay, rank these Tims based on which one you would rather have as a next door neighbor. Okay, A, Tim Allen of Home Improvement and Toy Story fame. Tim Duncan, quite possibly the greatest NBA power forward of all time. Or Tim Burton. Tim Burton, the idiosyncratic and mysterious film director.
Okay, well, I'm very torn between Tim Duncan and Tim Burton. I think I would love to go spend a little time at Tim Burton's house, like maybe like a creepy weekend at his house to see all his weird film paraphernalia, maybe have some nightmares I never forget for the rest of my life. But Tim Duncan is one of the most intellectual and genteel sports players I've ever heard speak. And also he would replace every light bulb in my house, even before I asked. I'm sure of it. So definitely, I would love to live next door to Tim Duncan.
Also, he lives in the Virgin Islands, I think. So maybe you'd be living in the Virgin Islands.
Even better. I'm moving there.
Whoa, David, you just elevated that answer, which was already the correct one. I feel like Tim Burton would be a fun next door neighbor for like a day.
Yeah.
And then you'd get the hedge creations and the noises and the fog.
It's true.
All day, every day. But Tim Allen, Tim the Toolman Taylor, that would be a nice next door neighbor too, but
because he's handy? You mean because he could like fix stuff for you?
It's like the actual utilitarian answer.
But the one thing every time I heard him do that hog sound though, I think I would feel like, oh my God, just stop.
Plus the other thing is he never actually goes over the fence. So I don't know that would actually be that useful.
Oh, true. All right. This is just confirmation. Tim Duncan, correct answer. Question 4. Slim, slimmer, slimmest. I was going to try to do a Richard Simmons question here, but
Simmons.
We got something else.
Okay.
Thought to be the thinnest material, graphene was discovered in 2004, and it is the world's thinnest material. One printed sheet of graphene is as thin as a single atom, atom.
Mm-hmm.
The coordinated carbon atoms on a sheet of graphene also contain properties to conduct electricity. It's mainly used in aerospace industries and in batteries.
I've learned a great deal. Also, I knew it wasn't as slim as an atom because atom has love handles. So that was not a good answer.
So that was a lot of explanation, but I don't know why I'm explaining any of it to you, since you, Adam Gidwitz, are a known graphene hoarder. Every time I try to buy an atomic sheet, I am always told that Adam Gidwitz was just here and bought it all. So my question to you, what are you doing with all that graphene? I'm concerned and intrigued.
Wow. What am I doing with all that graphene?
I got to call you out on it.
Yeah. Well, so I live in Brooklyn, New York, which is got some of the best pizza in the world. I'm not going to say it's the best, but it's got a lot of really good pizza. So we order a lot of pizza. So we always order more pizza than we can eat. And usually we wrap it up in tinfoil and put it in the fridge. But tinfoil can be very bulky, especially the way we wrap it. And then we've got just like stacks and stacks of tinfoil wrapped pizza.
Mm.
But what if I told you that instead of wrapping pizza in tinfoil, you could wrap it in graphene? And then you could fit twice as much pizza in your refrigerator. Would you believe me? And would you believe that my refrigerator is full of graphene wrapped pizza?
What if you told me that? I would be perturbed.
Feel free to feel perturbed.
But it's acceptable. Okay, so I think Adam just got 4 out of 4.
Wow.
Right, David.
Good job.
I was pretty sure the Bluebell one I got wrong, but okay, I'll take 4 out of 4.
Well,
Fine, 3.
It's my quiz.
Okay.
You've got it right. So that is the end of the blankest quiz.
That was remarkable. I never expected any of that to happen. I loved it, actually, especially the titles of the questions. I do wish I could have lived next to Tim from the Holy Grail, though.
Yeah. Although,
what is your favorite color?
Most people after the quiz say, I wish these questions were different. So they're on good standing.
Yeah, it's pretty common. It's a pretty common review. Well, Adam, that brings us to the final segment of this interview. It's our word of the week. And I hope you're ready to prove how well you know the English language, because we have we always have obscure, interesting, unusual words. And the thing is, we have to get this word from the bookstore troll because he stole the word of the week dictionary at the beginning of the season, and we explained it to you already. It's a whole thing.
Yeah,
Graham, are you prepared to journey down to the lair and negotiate with the troll?
I'm not prepared. I do not want to do this. I've been doing this every week. You heard the last time where I fell down the stairs, and then had to lick my wounds on the way back up. So I think it's your turn.
I did think that was a little gross. Maybe I should go.
I think it's your turn.
Yeah. Okay. All right. You know what? I'm going to go put on some armor just in case, and I'm going to head down to the lair, and I'm going to see what silly, strange, unusual thing the bookstore troll needs this time. So I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Graham, I think the bookstore troll is lonely. I think he might want to be friends instead of enemies, because he asked for a name. He asked us for a name, and we did talk about this last time, right? Where we asked the kids to send in possible names. Should we let the kids decide, and like if I go tell the troll that we'll give him one next week and let the listeners decide? Do you think that would work?
Let's do that. Yeah.
Okay, I'll be right back again. Okay, that works. He accepted that. So we'll have to decide. We have to let our listeners decide. We'll talk about this after our conversation with Adam about how we're going to let the kids decide which of the names we're going to assign to this troll, so we can actually have the beginnings of a relationship instead of beginnings of a friendship instead of an enemyship. Is that a word? All right. So, okay, hold on. I'm going to open this piece of paper up that he gave me. And, okay. All right. The word of the week. Are you ready, Adam?
I'm so ready.
Okay. The word of the week is abecedarian. This is how you spell it. ABECEDARIAN. Abecedarian. We're going to take however long it takes to write this word down. And then we'll be back in a second to share what our definitions are. As usual, Graham will go first, then I will go, and then we'll give the guest of honor the 3 spot. So, Graham, what do you think abecedarian means?
Well, this is going to be a little embarrassing because I'm pretty sure you all have the same answer that I do because this is very well known. But an abecedarian, those are the residents of Abecedaria, which is the self-proclaimed sovereign state that seceded from Sweden in the 70s, and they just listen to 70s pop all the time.
Yes, I've heard of this place. I had sworn never to think about it again, though.
All right, what you got, David?
I think that an abecedarian is a creature from a lagoon that refuses to be friends with you unless you bring them treats and otherwise terrorizes your grandparents.
Ooh, cruel.
Yeah, so
very specific.
You need to really make sure that you appease the abecedarians. Adam, what do you think abecedarian is?
Well, I mean, this is a word that I know. So, right, an octogenarian is 80 years old. A nonagenarian is 90 years old. An abecedarian is A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z years old.
You know, that makes a lot of sense. I feel like maybe there's something to that. So I'm going to unfold the answer here. Well, you're not that far off, to be honest with you. An abecedarian is a person who is currently learning the alphabet. That's
an adorable word. That's
a person
so cute.
Who is, I guess, a kindergartner, like a preschool, kindergarten, first grader, in that range. Abecedarian, a person who is currently learning the alphabet, which now that I think about it is appropriate because of all the things that we've talked about in this conversation so far.
This is the first time we've ended the podcast on a wholesome note.
And may it be the last.
Exactly. Well, just to overturn that, Adam, before you go, would you be willing to challenge one of your writer friends to come on this podcast and bear the slings and arrows that you just had to endure?
I challenge you. Who am I challenging?
Whoever you want.
Us?
Oh, I challenge one of my writer friends to come on this podcast. Which writer friend should I challenge? Have you ever had Grace Lynn on the podcast?
We have.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's not going to work. All right. Have you ever had... do you do all ages, like YA middle grade, or are you mostly middle grade?
Mostly middle grade, but we've done some older too.
Have you had Sayantani Dasgupta?
No.
Sayantani Dasgupta is the author of The Serpent's Secret and the Kiran Mala series, Kiran Mala and the Kingdom Beyond. She's amazing, right. And that series is awesome.
That's a great recommendation. Thank you. And also a great challenge.
Yes.
So it ball's in her court now, I think is what we're saying.
Yeah, totally. She'll listen, and then she'll call you guys.
Exactly. You just send us a pigeon or something. Adam, thank you so much. We know you're busy, so thank you for taking some time with us. We really appreciate it.
It was such a pleasure. Thank you, guys. Except for the quiz. That was disorienting. Thank you.
Okay, Graham, it's time to give the answer to last week's riddle. And I believe you said that a lot of kids got this one right. And then, Graham, you're going to share a new riddle for next week.
Yes, indeed.
I had a riddle about a rooster and an egg and which way it would fall off the peak, the gable of a home. What did people say the answer was? And were they right?
Okay, so as everybody who wrote in correctly said, roosters, they don't lay eggs. So the egg would not roll. The egg would not roll anywhere because hens lay eggs, not roosters.
And we all know that every hen, being a good hen, would never lay an egg anywhere that it could roll off a roof.
No, of course not.
So that's against hen instinct. So, Graham, we got a bunch of right answers, I think you said. So we're going to enter all those right answers into our contest, where at the end of this season, we're going to draw a winner from all the right answers throughout the season. And you get a chance to win a book bundle. Graham, let's give them this week's riddle so that we can have more entries into that pool of winners who might be able to earn their way to that book bundle.
For your consideration.
Okay.
A man. His name is Julian.
Like the calendar?
Just like the calendar.
Okay.
Julian, he lives in a nice little house, nice small town.
Okay.
Let's say he's 31 years old.
Okay.
He's got a big black beard, like the pirate.
Okay. Big black beard.
But
Julian the pirate. Okay.
Thing is, Julian loves to shave.
Okay.
In fact, Julian shaves up to 25 times a day.
Whew. He does love it.
But he still has a beard.
Oh.
How is this possible?
Oh, that's a good one. This is tricky. You know what? I think I'm going to need a whole week to think about this one.
Well, you have a whole week.
Oh, great.
That lines up well.
Perfect. If the kids think they know the answer to this, what should they do, Graham?
They should write us in at podcasts@goldberrybooks.com.
Podcasts@goldberrybooks.com. Perfect. And as I said, when you do so, if you get the right answer, you'll be entered into a pool of the winners this season, from which we will draw a winner to win a book bundle. So again, if you think you know the answer, email us at podcasts@goldberrybooks.com with what you think is the correct answer. Graham, that brings us to the end of the 8th episode of season 3 of Withywindle. This has been a fun time. I would assess this as a good time.
I would second your assessment. I am going to go take another multivitamin, drink some more tea, and I'm assuming you are going to go
gunpowder.
I'm assuming you are going to go eat some more Junior Mints.
No, I said I was going to limit myself to 3.
Oh, okay.
I'm probably going to make myself some soup though.
Junior Mint soup, yes.
Well, I had never considered that, but now the world of possibilities has been opened up to me. Thank you for the inspiration. And thanks also to SD Smith for sponsoring this season of Withywindle. Remember that when you use the code Withywindle at greenwriter.sdsmith.com, you can get 3 free lessons and you can get $10 off the program. So if you want to be a green writer, if you want to be a writer who is going and growing, be sure to do that. And again, that's code WITHYWINDLE, Withywindle, for the first 3 lessons free and $10 off. Also, thanks, of course, to our very special guest, Adam Gidwitz, for coming on the podcast. You might remember from the beginning of the episode, I was trying to understate how excited I was to talk to him, and I kind of got a little carried away with that, but we really did have a great time chatting with him, and we hope that you will check out his books and his podcast and his Netflix show and all the great things that he is doing. With that, for Graham Pittman,